I'm sitting here with this little guy that soapstone sculpture my grandparents picked up probably sometime in the early 1950s, just after emigrating to Canada from England. They didn't own very much art. In fact, I'm not sure of any art that they owned that they bought from Canada, except for this one piece. I never had a chance to ask them about it, or why they purchased it. Maybe it was a gift, but it was something that they kept throughout their entire lives, and now I've inherited it. So it must have been special to them at some point. It must have represented something about coming to Canada for them. Let's take a close look at this sculpture. He's dressed in a traditional, or we could even say cliched, outfit. His coat and pants are picked out in very delicate white lines, either paint or perhaps inlaid ivory. What's most remarkable is how smooth the surface is, almost devoid of decoration, in a kind of minimal, perhaps even abstract way. Last time we talked about how public art might be aligned with grand narratives, though not always is that the case. We also talked about how national narratives might have the tendency to be grand ones, but we also saw that that was also not the case, always. This time let's look at art on the other end of the spectrum. Let's look at intimate art made by a specific group of native people. The Inuit people had a tradition of making objects that were small and easily portable because they were a nomadic people. These objects served a ceremonial and spiritual purpose, but by the 1950s things had changed dramatically for the Inuit. The Canadian government had relocated them to villages through a forced assimilation that prevented native peoples from having free access to the land. That is, the government thought that they could solve the Indian problem by making natives like white people and at the same time corral them into villages as farmers instead of hunter-gatherers, and also prevent them from roaming free on the land. At the same time, the government promoted Inuit art as a way of employing the Inuit. The art, typically prints and soapstone sculptures, were easily sellable on a national and international stage. They were exotic and intimate, plus they were affordable. And most significantly, Canadians believed that by purchasing the art they were buying an authentic piece of native culture, which Canada had adopted as part of its heritage. But in reality, most of these pieces, like the one my grandparents bought sometime in the 1950s, was more like a souvenir than an authentic piece of Inuit culture. Or was it? Did the production of so-called souvenirs become the ad hoc modern Inuit culture? We've looked at one way that Inuit culture was represented by the objects they created, the forces that promoted it, and the audiences that purchased it. Another way that Inuit culture was represented or constructed was through film. The National Film Board of Canada created many documentaries about Inuit culture. One of the most well-known is about the artist Kinojwak. She was the first female artist associated with Cape Dorset printmaking operation funded by the Canadian government. The documentary was nominated for an Oscar in 1963. Watch some of the 19-minute NFB film to get a sense of how Native or Inuit culture was being presented, constructed, and created by the film, and come prepared to share your observations with the class. Think about the things that the director has the artist and the Inuit doing in the film. What is the role of the music? What does the setting tell us about the life of Inuit people being portrayed? Keep in mind that nothing in a film or documentary is accidental. You'll want to think about the way that film helps craft identity because you have a group assignment that involves you creating a 7-minute documentary about Inuit. Here's the assignment. You and your group are going to make a 7-minute documentary video. Working in groups of 4 or 5 students, you will make a 7-minute mini documentary on Native or Inuit art produced after 1945, and it could be a contemporary artist. 1 to 2 minutes on history that sets the context. You may choose from small-scale sculpture, printmaking, jewelry, souvenir art, masks, pottery, painting, large-scale sculpture, public art, you choose. But it must be Inuit, and it must be produced after 1945, and it must be a video. You can use iMovie, Camtasia, even talking PowerPoints. It must have voiceovers, and the quality of the documentary counts. I highly recommend that you script, storyboard on paper, and teleprompt voiceovers. Time out your video so you know how long it's taking. This is a documentary you might find in a museum or a gallery, or it might be more ironic and humorous. It explains briefly who the artist is, where they're from, and it goes into detail about their work and why it is and looks the way it does. How does the art fit into and or disrupt a narrative of either Native identity or Canadian identity? All group members will evaluate the group effort and self-grade the group. Central question that you can talk about with respect to your artist. What narratives are played out in the Inuit art of your choice? Are they regional and culturally specific to Inuit, or can they be contextualized as part of the Canadian experience?